Sara is the daughter of Daniel and Kirsten dos Santos and is an 11th grade student at Liberty High School in Maryland. She actively participates in the Spiritism program for youth and children and the Spiritist Society of Baltimore. She loves to sing, and she sings beautifully, and has a published song on iTunes and participated in dramas productions at her school as well. Thank you, Sara.
Hello. Okay, clearly I cannot use technology. But I just want to say thank you guys for inviting me here today to talk, and thank you for the organizers for inviting me here. And I also want to apologize in advance because I had prom last night and my voice is like kind of going, so just bear with me for a little bit. But I just wanted to start out by acknowledging what suicide is, and it's the act of intentionally hurting oneself. And it's the second leading cause of death in America after heart disease and cancer. And approximately 6,252 teens die each year from suicide alone. And there's a lot of causes for suicide, and it's usually things happening in your life and you feel like you're not able to handle it alone. And victims by suicide experience like this tunnel vision, and they feel like the only option to get out of what they're going through is to just take their life. But not a lot of people realize that what you're doing is you're not only creating more problems for yourself, really, you're not getting rid of the problems still come with you. And there was actually like kids at my school who tried to commit suicide, and they were like really close to me, and that kind of shocked me because, you know, you hear about suicide and you hear about it's a thing, and you don't really I don't feel like people really grasp it, and they're not like, oh, it's a thing, until you really like see it right in front of your face. Like I remember my friend pulling me aside and telling me, hey, like this person's in the hospital, like they're okay, but like they attempted to take their life, and that just kind of was an eye opener, and it was just crazy, and it's crazy. And a lot of the factors contributing to suicide is relationship problems, substance use, and crisis in the past or upcoming 2 weeks. And it's not only like anxiety and depression, like what Marina was saying, it's also like outside factors. But it's a real thing, and it happens. From Spiritist perspective, it gives us this new perspective that we're immortal spirits living a human experience. We don't die if we cut our life short. A lot of people try to say that when we die, like life just ceases to exist, but that's not true. We have past reincarnations, and we have like many lives ahead of us and behind us, and it just doesn't end when you try to end your life. And in the book Memoirs of a Suicide, Ivone Pereira talks about how we're all creatures of habit, and people who attempt to commit suicide are not doing this for the first time. And many of the spirits that have suffered from this before are believed to have gone through it before. So I feel like if you hear about people who committed suicide or have tried to commit suicide, it's not their first time. People have been going through this for many, many lifetimes, and it's an ongoing thing. And yeah, it happens a lot. And the case in Memoirs of a Suicide, an example of this, and you don't have to read this. This is just like a whole big thing. But there was this guy in chapter 18. His name is Amadeo, and he was a really hard worker and had a pretty decent life, and he worked at the bank, and he had this amazing life, but suddenly found he had throat cancer, and so he was kind of grief-stricken, and he was unable to pay for the treatment, so he decided to steal a lot of money from the bank. And the bank, shortly after, of course, found out that he had stole this huge amount of money, and he was kind of put into this flight or fight situation, and he had two options. He could either tough it out, go to jail, but die of cancer in jail, or he could take his own life. And unfortunately, he decided to take his own life. And he suffered a lot on the other side and was taken to the Valley of Suicides. And he was there for quite some time until a group of spirits came and decided to help him. And he was taken to this institution, the spirit world. And this professor had come to talk to a group of people who had committed suicide who were in the same boat as Amadeo, and they were doing a lot of self-reflection and a lot of group therapy work. And so one day the professor had like this contraption thing, and when you put it on your head, you could see your past life. So they did that to Amadeo, and then what was revealed was that he was a slave owner in his past life, and he had lots of land and slaves. And this one particular family, he decided to pick a girl from that family, and he decided to sexually torment her and rape her. And she was so distraught by this, and she took her own life. And the father of this girl went up to the slave master and said that he was going to go to bad places for raping his daughter and doing all this stuff to his daughter. And Amadeo was listening to this, and he was like, okay, all right. And later on, he ordered his tongue to be cut out. And so Felicio, the slave, he had bled out, and he had suffered from convulsions and then died. And after all this was done, Amadeo was just looking at this whole thing and processing it, and he was like, that just wasn't me. I don't know who this man is. Like, he just couldn't remember because we don't remember our past lives. And the professor was listening to him talk, and he brought in a spirit, and it had been Felicio. And then when Amadeo saw Felicio, he became really emotional because Felicio had suddenly embodied the figure of his father, and Amadeo had realized that in his most previous incarnation, Felicio had agreed to be his father. And Amadeo was so fond, and he loved his father so much, so it literally brought him to his knees because he realized that his father had come back to help him and regain a new perspective on the beauty of life. Because a lot of the problems nowadays is that a lot of people who suffer from depression or anxiety or who have suicidal thoughts, they don't have the right perspective. I feel like they're just kind of looking at things as glass half empty instead of half full, because when you're, like what Marina said, when you're like pressed with all these like outside pressures, you become so overwhelmed and you don't know how to handle it. So you just think that the only way and the only solution is to just take your life, because you feel like, oh, if I just do this, then I won't have any more problems anymore. My problems will be gone. And Felicio had come back to help Amadeo regain a new perspective, because a lot of the times it's perspective. So what do you do when faced with these problems? You need to get the treatment you or a loved one needs. And if someone cannot advocate for themselves, you need to advocate for them. And what does it mean to advocate for someone? It means if somebody else is going through something and you know they're going through something, you should really tell someone. You should tell an adult, tell a trusted friend, and you shouldn't think of it as, oh, like they're going to hate me if I tell someone. It's better to tell someone that someone else is going through something and talk to somebody else than just to watch them suffer. And if you yourself are going through something, you should really talk to like a counselor, a therapist. There's a lot of like life coaches or like therapists or school counselors for anyone who's in high school. There's like, one other person. But and by doing this, you can establish a support network around you with the help of colleagues, counselors, family members. And it's really good to establish like the support network, because you want to feel like you can talk to other people, and you want to feel like people can come to you and you can go to other people, because talking is amazing, and you need to express your feelings, because if you don't, everything is going to build up, and then one day something's going to happen, and then it's just going to be bad. And if you have suicidal thoughts, remember, treatment can help you regain perspective on life and what's going on. And Spiritism can help us because it brings awareness about the true purpose of our current life and how to cope with our struggles. And it allows you to see that God gave you a lot of struggles for a reason. Like, God doesn't give you more than you can handle, because that would just be unfair. He gives you the things that you're going through for a reason. Like, I remember when there was this movie when I was little, like it's called Soul Surfer. I don't know if any of you have seen it, with the girl who got her leg cut off. And I was just watching it, and I was like, this girl, how can she go through that? I feel like if I was in her position, I would just lose it. Like, I would just be like, oh my God. But God gave that to her for a reason. I mean, you see, she's stronger because of it, like physically and mentally. Like, she is one of the strongest people I know. Bethany Hamilton, I think her name is, yeah. And that's just amazing. I mean, God's not giving that to her because he's unfair and wants to see her suffer. God's giving it to her because he knows that she can do it and that she can become stronger because of it. So if you talk to people at your Spiritism center and reach out to them, they will definitely reach out back. I know, like at my centers and other centers, people have come up to me, like random people, and they've just been so nice, and I've been like, oh my goodness, like they are just so sweet. And study groups, counseling, and passes are provided at your Spiritism Center. The teachings from the study group and counseling and all like the passes, like you can really meditate with that, and things you learn from there are really, really helpful. Like at my center, I used to go to the study groups, not anymore because of school, but it was really nice and it was really like therapeutic. And even though sometimes when I was little I didn't understand what they were talking about, I just felt so happy when I left because it was such a nice environment to be in. And again, understanding that death doesn't exist and we live many lifetimes, and by ending your life only ends life with the physical body. We have many lifetimes, and God gives us these trials and tribulations because he knows we can handle it. And I feel like ending your life is just like kind of finding a way out, but you got to find a way to endure it and go through it, because literally what does not kill you makes you stronger. And it's a beautiful thing when you go through something so hard and then you're like, you finally get through it, you're kind of like, oh, is this over with? Are we done? But like, you know that once you endure one thing that's really hard, you can go through many more things that are even harder, and it's just a wonderful thing. And thank you for letting me talk.